goodness. Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte, and we're here live at the Build studio in New York City. Now, our next guest has expertly crafted his personal brand as one of the most prolific personalities of his generation. He's permeated the music industry, independently releasing original music and videos for his fans while maintaining artistic authenticity and creative control. He's got a global following numbering in the millions, and, I don't know, like 15 years ago, he starred in a little show on Nickelodeon you may or may not have heard of. Now, his latest single, Fuego Lento, is out now, and yes, it will get stuck in your head. Folks, put your hands together, make a crazy amount of noise, and join me in welcoming the great Drake Bell. Come on.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? That was like the nicest introduction anyone's ever done ever. That's really cool. Can I get a copy of that?
You can have it. That's all. You did all those
so
things.
I can watch that every morning.
Yeah,
like,
that's how you're gonna start.
Yeah, it's gonna start my day. Yeah.
We'll get more people to read it so we can keep it fresh for you. It won't just be.
That was amazing.
Well, thank you for doing all those things and making my job easy.
Yeah,
that was
for having me. This is awesome.
Dude, congrats on the latest music. It is going crazy right now, and there's so much to talk about. I want to get into the genesis of the song, the whole nine, but just first and foremost, how are you doing? How's life, man? How's Drake?
It's going good. It's awesome. Just touring a ton. I'm on the road constantly. And yeah, and with the new song and everything, it's taking me all over the world. And
That's
so
fun.
yeah, so it's been pretty exciting. I'm singing in Spanish on the song,
Which
is new and exciting. It's you know, it's funny. I went to Mexico 2008, maybe 2007, something like that. When I released, no, it must have been 2006 because it was when I released It's Only Time, and it did really well down there. And we just the Latin American fan base, for some reason, for the music, just they really embraced it, and I was able to, cultivate it and watch it grow and kind of do a lot of stuff down there, and. So from touring constantly, I was doing a bunch of big festivals, meeting a bunch of other Latin artists, and watching their shows and seeing how the audiences were reacting to their music, and I guess just being inundated with that kind of sound, and I go to the Latin Grammys, and everyone is when the artists come on stage, everyone's out of their seats dancing, it's like a big party and everything. Huge energy. So when I get back to the studio. After touring my last EP, Honest, I was like, man, this is what I hear, this is what I want to feel, and everyone's like, where did you just come from? Like, what's going on, And then that was just kind of the genesis of Fuego Lento, and it kind of turned into this this whole Latin feel.
It's pretty amazing, man. If you look at the singles that you were putting out just before Fuego Lento, man, you had I'm trying to remember the order, but Call Me When You're Lonely and First Thing in the Morning. And there's sort of a progression. You can see you could feel this vibe sort of infusing itself within.
Yeah, I mean, definitely First Thing in the Morning has kind of a Latin vibe. Yes. When I did Fuego Lento, I was like, oh, I've got to sing in Spanish. That'd be so rad. And I don't speak very good Spanish. I speak enough when I'm in the country, to get around. I can get around by myself and be okay. But actually singing and putting something out on a record and having an entire group of people kind of say, "Oh man, that sounds terrible. Why do you sound so? That doesn't sound right. That your accent's awful and all that." It was kind of daunting, but they embraced it. They loved it, and it wasn't as difficult in the studio as I thought it was going to be. So it worked out. Yeah.
Well, when you look back and you look at the progression of your music and you look at those, specifically those three, and we're focusing on this most recent period. When you were writing those, were you viewing any of that as building blocks, as growing a skill set, as preparing for that ultimate track where you could check off all the boxes you wanted to check off?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't think very much especially now. I used to think the Beatles, an album has to be an entire statement, work of art, and story from beginning to end. But now it's just song by song, So it's I really don't. There's nothing linear really, and I mean, if you listen to the catalog, I put out a cover of Gucci Gang that is completely left field. That was just for fun, and Call Me When You're Lonely is I got Little Mama rapping on that. It's got some more urban feel to it, and then. First Thing in the Morning is more Latin, so I don't really. There's definitely nothing linear, really. And the new stuff I have coming out is way more urban, even kind of hit. working with guys like Tank God and Cassius Clay, and who did like Rich the Kid's record and people. So it's like, I mean, there's not really any. I don't know. I don't think very much when I make the music. I just make it.
But
I'm like, what do I want to hear today?
Well,
You know?
exactly. Now, let's say you ask yourself that question: where do you go to find what it is that you want to hear? Like, how do you find? You explained for like Fuecolento that you were surrounded by that. You were in that culture. You were playing your music out there in that world, and you were seeing this energy and responding to it. And now there's more of like a hip hop influence that's sort of to seep its way in. Where are you finding those influences, or how are they finding you?
Honestly,
really?
I mean, I think I've just always been so influenced by life around me. Like even all the songs I've ever written, it's always been just I've been inspired by just events in life, and so I think it's just whatever's happening around me. You know, like last year I was spending a lot of time with people like like Lil Pump and Lil Xan and like this whole like Diablo, like the Xanarchy crew and Tank God and like more, you know, and that's like kind of the. And I was listening to a lot of that music, so I think it just kind of evolved into when I got in the studio. I was like, "Oh, this is dope. I want to do some stuff like this." And then you're always kind of fearful of like, am I going to be taken legitimately? Like now that I'm trying to do some, you know, all right, I'm going to try to kind of rap or do something different. And but I don't know. As I've always looked at myself as like music and music is music. It's music. I've always looked at my music, there we go, as like my art form, you know? So it's like I can do, you know, if I want to paint this way today, I'll paint that way tomorrow, I'll do this today. If I, you know, and it's really kind of, whatever the reaction is kind of, you know, that's what the art evoked. Okay, that's cool, you know, if you looked at my piece of art and went, oh, well, cool, I did that to you. Yeah. That's awesome. Like, I got that emotion out of you. That's dope. Or if you're like, whoa, that's awesome, like, then I got that from you. Like, if you kind of just walk by it passively, then I didn't really do my job. So even if I am doing something where, why is he making this kind of music? Awesome. I didn't make you go, yeah, I mean, it's cool, whatever. Like you gave me some reaction.
If you're gonna just do stuff that's safe, where's the fun in that for you as an artist?
And that too, it's like there's no real fun in safety. It's kind of like, you know, it's much more fun to jump out of an airplane than to just kind of like, you know, fly to New York.
I just love that like you can listen to this track and like, especially now with Spotify or music services, digital music services, where it's so easy once you discover an artist to immediately discover their discography. It's not like when you had to go out and like, oh, I have this record, now I've got to go buy that. It's like, no, I've listened to this one song, and now I can immediately hear what he did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And there's like a full-on rockabilly record waiting for people down there. Like,
oh, dude, there's everything, man.
Everything in there. It's so amazing.
I did a rockabilly record with my idol Brian Setzer, who I couldn't believe I got to make this album. I mean, I used to sit in my bedroom in front of the mirror trying to, I mean, everything. It's so funny because I'll be with friends. I'll take friends to go see him live, and they'll be watching him, and they'll be like, dude, that's exactly what you do live. Like, those are your moves, those are your looks, that's how you everything. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I'm just a copycat, but yeah, that record was a lot of fun to do, and yeah, I mean, like I said, like it's completely, you know, it's a blues rockabilly 1950s record that's completely left field, but that's the cool thing about not being signed and just being able to, you know, having the opportunity and you know, being so blessed with an audience that, you know, is open and kind of embraces, you know, whatever I do, even if it's like, this isn't really my thing. At least there's something in there they dig, you know. So it's cool to be able to kind of just do whatever I want.
How'd you get into Brian Setzer? Do you remember like back in the day? Like when
I remember totally how I got into Brian Setzer. So I was I loved anything 1950s. I mean, you know, I grew up watching, you know, Leave It to Beaver and Happy Days. I was just anything 1950s. The hot rods, the pinup girls, the pompadours, like the whole style, everything. And so growing up, it was all Elvis for me, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis and all that kind of stuff. And then one day I was in my bedroom and I was watching this like 80s compilation. You know how they do like the songs of the 80s and it like
live song of the 80s.
Exactly. And it shows all these like terrible like hair metal bands and they're just like with all the makeup and the hair and all this stuff. And as that's going through, it cut to these three guys that had pompadours, but they were covered in tattoos, and they were the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. Yeah. And I was just like, what? Wait a minute. Hold on. And he had this big orange guitar and these big baggy pants and this big blonde pompadour. and he got covered in tattoos, and I was like, I didn't even hear that, because it was like going by. I just saw them. And so I saw the name, and it was like Stray Cats, and I ran into my living room, and I was like, Dad, have you ever heard of this band called the Stray Cats? And he's like, oh, that rockabilly band from the 80s? Yeah, of course. And I'm like, okay, I need to know everything about them. We lived right down the street from a Tower Records. Yeah, I was like, when there were record stores.
This used to be a Tower Records.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
rad. But that's a great documentary, by the way. Side note, you should check that out if you haven't seen it.
We had him here.
Oh, really? I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's really good.
But yeah, so when there were Tower Records, I was like, man, I gotta go there and I gotta buy all the records. Like I didn't even know what they sounded like. I just knew they looked like what I loved, but more punk rock, because I was really into punk rock music and ska music and all that. So I loved anything rebel, basically. Anything that was like, sticking it to the man and like, no, Dad, I'm gonna do this. Like I was into it. Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean vibe, Yeah, and so I went to the record store and I picked up this Rock This Town compilation, and I went home and I pressed play, and it was the coolest. It was just the coolest sound I'd ever heard, and I just wanted to. I wanted to be everything about it, like the way it sounded, the way they looked, the way they played. I mean, just the aesthetic. The drummer stood up and played. Everything was just so rebel. They were using crappy instruments, and they weren't spending any money, and they were broke, and they were just hot rodders, and there was just something like punk rock about it. But the difference between the punk rock music I was listening to and the Stray Cats was they took punk rock, and you had to be an unbelievable musician to play the rockabilly music. So whereas punk rock was just, anybody can just get up and thrash, and that's the point of punk rock, is just getting up and, doing whatever. But when it turned to like rockabilly music, I mean, you had to know music, you had to be a player, you had to be, so that was, and you had to look cool. So
yeah, and you had to look pretty cool. You had to have the hair for it, man. I remember, dude, I was obsessed as a young man with Brian Setzer and whatnot. And then it was like a gateway drug. If you were into punk or into rock or whatever, and you got into Brian Setzer, it would like open the door to like big band in general, and just like these intricate like compositions and all these things. And then I'm Italian, and I was like, oh, Louis Prima, and then all this stuff. It was just like snowballed from there.
I mean, that was the thing. It was like mixing Louis Prima with the Clash. You know what I mean? It was like they took this 1950s, 1940s kind of, wild saxophone, Elvis, Carl Perkins thing, and then mixed it with that Ramones 1970s angsty Sex Pistols punk rock vibe, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I mean, Brian Setzer between like 1979 and 1991. I mean, there's nobody cooler. Yeah.
Do you think, at the risk of sounding like two old men sitting on rocks now, but you describe that moment of like, I've got to go to Tower Records and buy all these records, and I don't even know what they sound like. Yeah. Like, yes, you can have everything right now at the drop of a hat, but do you think that we were forming stronger emotional connections because it was such a heightened experience?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a record that I play at my house almost every day, and I only bought it because I was at Amoeba, and this was years ago. The Amoeba was right next to where we shot Drake and Josh, so every lunch I was able to walk right next door and just buy records, and just get the coolest records and everything. But the thing is, like, the mystery's gone. Like, I walked by and it'd be what the staff is listening to, staff picks, staff favorites, or whatever. And you walk by and just see some cool album cover that you have no idea what the music sounds like or anything. And there was this one album cover by I'm gonna forget the name of it. Camera Obscura was the band, and it was called Underachievers, Please Try Harder. And the album cover was just a really cool picture of these two girls, and they're super high fashion look, like they look like Coco Chanel dressed them or something. And I don't know, it was just something really cool aesthetically about the album cover. I had no idea what the music sounded like, but I bought the record. And I got in my car and I put it on and literally didn't skip a track. It was like one of the coolest records I'd ever heard. And I think that that's kind of like what and until this day, I mean, I listen to the record almost every day. It's one of the ones that I just play in my house just because it's just like you can just put it on,
You have such a vivid memory of that moment.
Of that moment. And so I have that tie to it, And that sentimental tie and that whole emotional tie, and it's still with me, you know. And I just think that now I don't like. I would have never found that record if I. And it's the same thing with renting movies. You know, it's like, you know, everything's in your queue because of what you've watched before. I used to go to Blockbuster and I'd be like, whoa, why am I all of a sudden looking at the back of this movie that I would have never been in my queue? I would have never picked up. But now I'm going to go home and rent it. And I didn't even know I wanted to watch this weird, funny horror movie tonight. Like,
it's so crazy.
You come across like movies like Hot Fuzz or these things, like, and then you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a Todd Solondz fan now. Like, I had no idea that, or I'm a this director or that director. And that kind of discovery and searching out and going to record stores and going through it all is just... Yeah, I think that's kind of gone, and now we do sound like two old men on rocks.
We do, and and I'm going to go just a little bit further because you've tapped into something that's huge for me lately. Is my wife and I found a place up in Connecticut. This dude's been renting DVDs and videos consistently since the night. He's still going.
No way.
Independent renter. So now I live a little farther north. We'll drive like 30 minutes on a Friday.
There is still
and just walk around the aisles and look at the art and like rent movies on discs and be really old and all.
I think there's one Blockbuster in like Alaska or somewhere.
It was Alaska, and then I want to say Oregon or
maybe it's Oregon. It's Oregon.
Because the Alaska one, they didn't make it.
They're gone. Yeah, but it's the last one, and it's the same thing. I mean, they're like, our customers like that feeling of coming through and discovering stuff. Yeah,
it'll come back.
Yeah, but and everything just being in your queue because of what you've listened to or liked before. I mean I feel bad for kids because it just. I mean. When you looked in, you remember when we used to have the 300 CD booklet in your car, and you'd have to go through all the CDs? I mean, man, like I said, I would have stuff from big band to 1950s to 60s, you know, all of the Beatles and Beach Boys and Queen, and then all of the cool stuff in the 80s, and then all the grunge 90s and everything. I mean, it was all eclectic, but now it's just... You know, it's like streamlined to your taste, and this is what you like, so this is what we're going to give you. And
well, you got to make an effort, and in that way, you can recapture some of that glory, a little
maybe
bit.
Maybe that's why my music's so eclectic. Maybe I just try and make so many different sounds. Because honestly, I just try and like if I'm inspired by this type of music, or if I like this sound, I end up wanting to make it. Like the rockabilly record. Like I play every year. I do a big Christmas show every year with a full big band and a horn section and everything, and that's like. You know, it's one of my highlights of the year because I love being able to play all different types of music, you know? So I think being able to give fans, and it's kind of like my journey through music as a kid, is like through my life, and my journey through music is like, here you go, you know.
Talking about playing your music live, I'm really curious, and I wanted to get to this a little bit earlier when you were mentioning it. Being inspired by your fans to sing in Spanish for the first time and do that for them. I had read somewhere that it wasn't just the energy, but also you picked up on like when you would just talk to them a little bit in Spanish, they'd really respond to it. So now you're singing. What was going through your head the first time you were going to play this out live and you were going to do it in front of people and show them, I sing in Spanish now?
Just trying to remember it, you know, just trying to remember the words. But no, it was really awesome. I mean, I would go and sing. We would do covers in Spanish, and they would just lose their minds. And what's really great about that culture is, I mean, even if you try, I mean, even if you go there and you know, whenever I'm in Mexico and I'm like, as long as I just try to speak the language, they're so they just love it. You know, it's like so. They're like, wow, that's so cool that you took the time to really try. And so as an audience member, and, you know, they take it even more to heart, like, wow, he really digs us. Yeah. And so it was always important when I'm, you know, live to try my hardest to work things in Spanish, you know. I was watching Paul McCartney, who's like, you know, my God, and he did a show in Mexico City. He didn't speak one word of English, and it was like the most inspiring. I was like, are you kidding me? He did the entire thing in Spanish, and not just like, oh, here's the next song. No, full monologue. Oh, this is like his normal show that you would see, but he did it all in Spanish. He used a teleprompter and practiced all of the pronunciation. So like he wasn't just reading it because that could, you know, your pronunciation could be completely botched. But yeah, no, that was really impressive. So I was like, man, I really want to be able to do that. And then when the opportunity to do Fuego Lento came, you know, I was like, I don't know, I didn't even think if I was going to make Latin music or anything, but it's just kind of what came out in the studio. And then when I did it and went to go perform it live, it was really cool. The first time I performed it live was in front of a huge audience. It was like 100,000 people or something like that in Lima, Peru, or somewhere like that. So it was really awesome. When I went into the Spanish part, because they hadn't even heard the song, it hadn't been released. When I went into the Spanish part, I mean, the whole crowd erupted. So yeah, it was amazing. It was really cool.
That's so amazing. Yeah, the fans have responded so well to it. Do you know, where was the origin of the idea for the 24-hour Fuego Lento challenge? Where did that come from?
I don't know. I was just
you just
tweeting things,
going for the ride.
Yeah, I was just tweeting things.
You believe
yeah.
people? A lot of people went for it.
They did it. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I jumped in on a few too. They were like 15 hours in, 12 hours in.
That's
I was like,
wild.
I was like, no way. I was just like, hey, what, because actually what it was I was thinking. Years ago, I was watching some movie like about the 1950s, and obviously, and there was some disc jockey who played like a Buddy Holly song for 24 hours on the radio, and the police, like the radio heads came down, tried to take him off the air. He barricaded the door. He put all of the equipment up against the door. They had to end up calling the police down to the station because he would not stop playing. It was like, that'll be the day. For 24 hours on the radio, and they were like, dude, he wouldn't play any commercials, he wouldn't do anything, and he barricaded himself in the studio, and they ended up having to get the fire department to come down and break down the door because he wouldn't stop playing it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's play the song for 24 hours,
It's pretty amazing. We're going to go to the audience in just a second, but there was one last thing. Well, two last things. One, I want to remind everybody about your tour dates, because you're coming back to New York. Actually, I say that assuming you're leaving, but I also know that there's a tour date at the end of the month.
Yeah.
I assume you're going to do a bunch of stuff between now and then. But yeah, so you got a tour coming up.
I'm always on the road.
So you're always on the road, and people can get all those dates at your site. Right?
Yeah, all the dates
like
on
the
the
best
site,
place.
and it's probably on the card because I don't know what the dates are.
I know at least
when am I
here-
coming to New York?
New York, it's like the 28th or something like
28th.
that.
All right.
But
yeah,
don't
check,
quote
but
us
it's all,
on
it's
that.
all on my Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff.
I just caught that before I came down here. I forgot to
Yeah.
write down the 20th.
No,
But I'm like
that's-
90% sure it's the 28th. And we've got two questions in the room, so we're going to go to them before I eat up all the time because I'm just having too much fun talking to you, man. First question's coming from right over here. Go for it.
Drake, I have two questions. I have two questions. The first is, why do you decide to call the album Fuego Lento in Spanish? I mean, there's something special in use the words in Spanish. And the second question is, there's a Latino singer that you want to collaborate with?
Yeah, well, we called it Fuego Lento. It was originally called Slow Burn, and when we were in a meeting and we were all singing it, and it was getting stuck in our head, and someone just turned to me and they're like, "Oh, I love Fuego Lento. I love that song." And I was like, "No, it's Slow Burn." And I was like, "Oh, wait, Fuego Lento." I'm like, wait, why am I not calling it Fuego Lento? Like, that's the name of the song. So it kind of just happened organically like that. And a Latin singer. I actually just did some stuff with this cat named Jorge Blanco, who's a really cool guy. I'm doing some things with, but I would love to work with like Sophia Reyes or Becky G or one of the girls. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Maybe Cardi B too. So you
Yeah.
just
I mean, that would be dope. Heck yeah. Of course. Yeah. Taki.
Awesome. What's that? We're going to do one more question. We got another question coming from the crowd right over here.
Hi, Drake. I'm a big fan of Drake and Josh. I wanted to know, is there any artists that you haven't worked with that you inspire to? And if you ever have moments where like a song doesn't pan out or maybe a project that you're working on doesn't get the response, how do you pick yourself up and how do you keep yourself going and motivated?
An artist I'd like to work with like Post Malone. Oh, Mark Ronson. I think I would love to work with Mark Ronson. I think he and I would do some really cool stuff because, we both have cool hair.
Part of it. That's one of the biggest steps.
He dresses really well, and his music's not bad. No, but I think he and I musically we're kind of cut from the same cloth. Like he definitely digs way back in that eclectic sound, and stuff. So, in that nostalgic sound. And when a piece of work doesn't pan out or it doesn't come out the way that you want it, I mean, that happens a lot with film and television because you're not in control of it. You're kind of so out of control, and you wait so long. You make a movie, and then you got to wait for 9 months to see it, and then finally you see it, and you're like, oh my gosh, you used that take. Oh man, or I did that better. Oh man, I thought that came across totally different. And you just kind of gotta it is what it is. I don't really have. You kind of just have to not really care too much, also, and just be like on to the next thing. If you put too much into one thing, one song or one thing, I mean, there's been plenty of songs that I've written and I recorded, and when they came out, they didn't, it wasn't what was in my head, or the producer didn't get it right, or I didn't get it right, or my vocal didn't come out right, and I don't know, you can't, I mean, you have to care. You obviously have to, and I think I'm using care in two different definitions here. It's like, yeah, you have to care about your work, but you also have to not care about people's opinions so much. Yeah, care about what people think, care about your fans, care about, that, but don't care about the opinions too much, I mean, I read all the comments on Instagram, but I don't really care about what they're saying. I'm kind of, it's just kind of market research. Like, okay, do the fans like what I'm putting out, or what? Do they like this more? Oh, this guy like this group like this over here more, or this group like this over here more. But if you sit there and you kind of go, oh man, he hated the way my voice sounded on that one part, and then you went back and you listened to it and you're like, oh man, he's right. Oh man, you just can't. It's just like, hey man, this is my art. It is what it is. I'm sure that there's great artists, like, I'm sure that there's Van Goghs and Picassos where they're like, yeah, but the way I drew that ear, like, ooh, that's like no good. And I'm sure Mark Twain's like, yeah, but that one, why did I write that line in Huckleberry Finn like that? Like, it sounds like a 12-year-old wrote that. I'm sure, and then, but we're like, no, it's Pulitzer Prize winning. Like, it's amazing. It's perfect. So as an artist, there's always going to be points where you're discouraged, or somebody tells you it's not good enough, or a fan, or somebody, you get put down or whatever. But I don't know. You kind of have to just not put so much, so much into it, I guess.
Having, give me the second, we're going to wrap up in a second, but I'm made of questions. Having had the control that you've had over your music and the experience that you've had with your music, being able to put out exactly what you wanted to put out, have you thought, have you entertained the idea of doing TV or film again if you were in more control, if you were running the whole show front to soup to nuts, which is a big responsibility. It's a huge project to take on, but have you thought, oh, if I could do this with music, maybe I will go back and do this?
I love every aspect of film and television, and growing up, I mean, me and Josh were the same exact way. I mean, we're always walking over, how does the camera work? How do you focus this? How does that work? Why do we light it this way? Hey, how come this works this way? And how, and we're always in post-production, and, how do you edit this out? And how do you make that, that work? Oh, if you just cut this here, that totally works. And, why do you angle it this way? And how do 4 cameras set it? Like, we were always constantly asking questions. And we directed episodes of Drake and Josh, and Josh does a lot of writing and directing and producing, and I've always, if I definitely see that as something in my future, creating and writing and directing and all of that. It's just, like you said, that's something where, okay, big project, 100%, putting all the eggs in one basket. I'm working on a film for the next year and a half,
Let me ask you a question. Have you, knowing all the different talents you guys have together, have you ever talked about collaborating again, not on like a Drake and Josh thing, but just the two of you working together? You're buds. You post together all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
you talk all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. If the opportunity came up, it'd be killer, And I think, yeah, that's the thing with me and Josh. It's always been like, if it's really cool and thoughtful, then yeah, but not just to do it. If there's something to just, oh, here's a great opportunity to get you guys back together and everyone will love it. It's like, yeah, but is it cool? And is it just kind of just trying to, get the money that's on the table, or like he's artistic, and me too. So like, it's got to be something thoughtful. And I think Drake and Josh was done in such a way where it does live on and it stands the test of time. And, we didn't have any pop culture references in it, and the writing was really thoughtful. It wasn't just kids' TV. If you go back, it's so quotable, and the writing was so thoughtful. So I think that was just always important to us, was making sure that, it was kind of artistic as well as, doing it just for fun.
For sure. Well, I have taken up a lot of your time, and I want to thank you for being so generous with it. I want to thank you guys for being an awesome audience, having great questions.
Thank you, yeah.
You can applaud, but we're going to plug a couple of things before we get out of here. So if you haven't listened to it yet, I don't know what you're doing. Stop wasting time. Fuego Lento. You can listen to it right now. Get it stuck in your head. Listen to it for 24 hours. I know a bunch of people that did.
Do it.
You're always on the road. You're touring all the time, but I know you're going to come back to New York. If you're in New York watching, check. If you're not in New York, go follow this boy and find out where he's going to be. He's everywhere. He's probably playing by you soon. Anything else you want to tell the people about? Anything coming up? Anything you want to tease? This is it. Last chance.
No, just go listen to Fuego Lento.
There we are.
Get the
That's
strings.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Fuego Lento. Everybody, please
You
make
can go check out the music video for Fuego Lento. Actually,
you
go
have
check
to
out the
wait,
music
yeah.
video for Fuego Lento. That there's an age restriction. Just sign in. You'll
18
be
and up.
fine. It's a little saucy. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Absolutely.
Not safe for work. But
I don't know how we made it the whole thing without really talking about that. You got to come back because I'm going to
I'll
talk
come
about
back
the
and
video.
talk about the music video.
Guys, go nuts. Make a crazy amount of noise. Join me in thanking the great Drake Bell right here. Come on, do it up.
Yeah, thank you guys.